Welcome to Geek Rant. Welcome to Geek Rant. It's Greg here again on the channel with Toby, and today we're going to be talking about episode 1 of season 2 of The Rings of Power. That's quite a mouthful, isn't it? But before we do, I just want to say thanks to everybody for watching the videos. You know, we're only a small channel. It's nice to see some of the views going up and people subscribing, and we greatly appreciate all the support that you can give us. We want to make more videos. We're enjoying what we're doing, and we hope you are too. So keep the comments coming. We'll try and reply. And yeah, we'll move the channel forward, which would be great. Okay, so season 2 of the Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power, has come out. They dropped 3 episodes as the premiere this time, and they were all quite long episodes. So we're going to focus on episode 1 today. It was over an hour long. It's almost like a mini film, isn't it?
It was.
And it was an all right start. We reviewed pretty much the last series, didn't we? When it was out a year or two ago.
I mean, I personally think it's as good a start as it could have had.
Yes. Yeah.
Considering the last season, and considering how bad last season was, I was absolutely quite surprised how much I enjoyed this episode in isolation.
I agree. I agree.
It was interesting.
I think it was quite handy having a bit of time between the 2 series, if it makes sense.
I think 2 years now, isn't it? 2 years?
Yeah, it's been a while. I think it was end of 22, wasn't it, that it sort of came out. And obviously, it's a big budget TV show, isn't it? They've spent probably the most money on this show of any TV shows. There's a lot of special effects and
there are
imagery and so on within it, which is why I think it takes so long to produce, because I think a lot of it is them on a green screen or whatever, with a load of special effects, and also having that time between the last series. I kind of forgot a lot of what happened in the last series, and it felt a little bit like it was a slightly fresher sort of look at it.
Definitely,
there were certainly some bits in there. This first episode also only concentrated on some of the characters, not all.
Which I think was a great idea.
Yeah.
Which is what Game of Thrones does.
Yes. Yeah. And that I think worked a little bit better because you got a bit more of their story.
Definitely.
We weren't feeling like we were waiting around just to see a bit more of a story on each individual character. So
I think that's why they dropped 3 episodes, because I think they're going to have 3 storylines, maybe 2 episodes for each storyline out of it, and then bring it together. So definitely worked.
Yeah. And I didn't miss like the elven character who was running around with the humans. That side of the story I found a bit weak last time. I didn't miss that in this. I didn't miss much of that in this episode.
No, didn't miss it at all.
No. I am naturally more interested in the elves side of it. What's going on with their kind of world and
don't you think though that that's the weakest element to this series, the way they've done the elves, and the way that, especially in this episode, I thought the writing was better when it wasn't the elves.
That's
interesting.
think
they seem to want to almost create like a posh overtone to the way the elves speak, and I was kind of like, why are you doing this? They're ethereal. They're not stupid posh. And I just felt like there was a moment when Gil-galad, I just thought he was so pompous.
I think it's
and
more
stupid.
His performance just isn't good, is it? He's definitely one of the weaker people for me.
By far. I think he's probably the weakest in there for me. I would say.
Yeah. But I actually quite liked the character that they brought in. I think his name was Círdan.
Yes.
And
the shipwright.
The shipwright, that's right. And he's like a proper ancient elf, isn't he? He's like one of the oldest elves, and that's why he's got this beard, isn't it? Because he's
apparently
so
it's something
long.
like the 3rd cycle of life.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And from I think in the histories and thing, I think he does actually. He's one of the last elves to leave Middle Earth and go to Valinor.
yeah, yeah.
So he's proper ancient, and he actually added a nice element to it. The guy was quite a good actor, you know. I thought
He's okay, isn't he?
he was
Experienced.
I thought he seemed, you know, more like an elf. You know how you're sort of talking about the elves and
Yeah,
being not being too posh. He wasn't too posh, wasn't too he was a bit
no,
more like an elf in my mind, if that makes sense. And I
yeah.
think that's probably why I liked him a bit more. You know, that little
It was
set.
difficult to get beyond the beard. I mean, listen, talking
I
of a
didn't
man with a
mind that.
beard,
I didn't mind that.
couldn't. I don't know. There's something about
I'm always
beards.
massively jealous of beards. You know this.
Well, I think
Hmm,
with the beard, with the beard, he looked more human,
hmm.
and it was
Maybe.
obviously he's an important character
Yeah.
in the lore of Lord of the Rings, and they
Hmm,
brought him in
hmm.
because they have the rights to that particular element of the story.
Yes,
So
it's like all the
why
appendices
not
and
bring
stuff,
him
isn't it?
in?
Yeah.
Yeah, why not
Yeah.
bring him in?
No,
Um,
absolutely. And
but
it gave a little bit because I really don't like the guy who plays Gil-galad in this. I think he's
no,
terrible.
no, Benjamin Walker.
He's just terrible acting, and I don't really know him much from other things. I know he did an Abraham Lincoln vampire killer thing, which was average and this sort of thing, but I
Mm,
don't really know much about him as an actor.
no,
I've never liked the Galadriel woman. She's
no,
just there's just something about her that makes me
Miss
sort
Clark.
of yeah, just doesn't quite do it for me. Some of the other
She's always sort of
elves are
speaking like
okay.
she's trying so hard
I
to
know.
be elf-like. It's like, oh my God,
No, that
please
describes it
just
perfectly.
stand
Yeah,
back, breathe
yeah,
deeply, and just
yeah,
take your time to answer the questions, and
yeah,
you'll be more elf-like. She's so up her own arse. It's
yeah.
unbelievable.
No,
It's
exactly, and I think you know, it's some of the other elves were okay. You know, the guy playing Elrond wasn't quite as bad this time. He had a little bit of,
his
you know, to
moments.
stand the line, you know, which was good.
He still
Where they
did those
did,
stupid kind of knowing looks like,
yeah.
I know what you're thinking. There was a lot of that, wasn't there? And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh,
I
it's
know they just haven't quite got it right, have they?
no, they haven't,
How to
man.
pitch the elves. I think
They're
that's
a long way off, I
a
think,
really
actually.
key element of any Lord of the Rings thing. You know, they did it
Yeah,
quite well in the original Peter Jackson stuff. That was you know good. You know how they carry themselves, how they are. You know,
yeah,
like you say, it's like they've got this ageless wisdom, isn't it? That you
yeah,
know makes them peaceful, relaxed, and
yeah.
but dominant in some
Knowledgeable
respect.
and
Yeah,
wise.
exactly.
You
And
know, and there
that
was a scene at the end, wasn't there, where they had that, where they all gathered together,
yes,
and Gil Galad is talking to them. He's
yeah,
singing. Oh my God,
yes, yeah,
he's
yeah,
singing, and then it pans across the cast, and rather
yeah.
than a bunch of elves, it looks like some sort of traveling troupe of actors, doesn't it? You know, there's like a whole range of different sorts of mixed people, kind of. It was just ridiculous. It looked more
I
like
know.
it,
I wasn't. I know what you mean. I did
yeah.
notice that, but I think I noticed that because there's been a lot of people harping on about those sorts of things, you know,
I haven't really looked. I haven't really watched much of it. That I mean,
no,
I've tried to
I'm thinking
avoid
back
some
to
of
the
the negative
first
press.
series. I think that's when
Yeah,
they were
yeah,
talking about, you know, female dwarves and you know
yeah. I mean, look, I'm
black
over that.
elves and things like that.
I'm going
I'm
into
not
this
worried about that.
season. I'm
Yeah,
going into this season trying to look at it as
fresh eyes.
a fantasy series,
Hmm.
not necessarily set in Middle Earth, but
Well,
just
it
something
kind
that
of isn't,
is.
is it?
Well, no.
They're
I
kind
mean,
of
things happen
slightly,
very quickly in this
yeah,
show, and I kind of applaud that to a certain extent because I think that sometimes you have to have stories moving along more quickly. And I think that although some of the timescales are a bit unrealistic in how they traveled around this particular episode, I
I think that's one thing for me. Yeah. Sorry, you
yeah,
carry on.
yeah,
I agree. I agree. This is the
I
point I was going to make.
I'm kind of like, look, I can see what they're doing. They're
Yeah.
trying to make this quick. They're trying to make it interesting, trying to make it
Yeah.
entertaining, and that is that's very
Otherwise,
much,
it's just a massive walk across a huge,
yeah.
I know what you mean.
It's got its faults in that area, but
Yeah,
I can understand why they want to do that.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
What?
they
Yeah,
want to do,
exactly. Otherwise, it will be
yeah,
like the Fellowship of the Ring, where they're just traveling all the time, and
yeah,
you won't see much action,
yeah.
unless it's
I have to
things
say
like that.
the intro is very interesting.
Yeah,
So we had the recap
yeah.
of the show, which I thought they edited really well. I thought it flowed together pretty well.
Okay.
And then we had this opening scene where we meet Sauron for the first time, in like the
Yes.
first age or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And that
Terrible
was
actor. Terrible actor.
it was really
Really
interesting that
poor.
they I thought it was just he was just terribly cast.
Yes. Yeah,
I thought
yeah.
he actually didn't do too badly with the violence. I thought he looked like Mr. Bean, maybe picked. He was Mr.
Brilliant.
Bean with
Mr. Bean.
long hair, and he had that kind of manner about him, didn't he? I thought he might break into song or joke or something like that. But then he killed
Well, I
that
thought his
guy
whole
and stabbed
speech
him in
was
the
really
eye.
stupid, wasn't it? A lot of you gonna,
Yeah,
a lot of you gonna
who's going to believe that?
die, but don't worry about that. It'll be for the greater good. Who's
Yeah.
gonna want to hear that as
I
a
actually quite enjoyed it though. I was like fascinated. I was like, what is going? This guy's going to get it, isn't he? He's going to get it. You
yeah,
knew he was going to get it. And then
yeah.
the fight scene, I thought was really really interesting. I think it was he was
It was a
rightly
bit more
ridiculed.
graphic than I thought it would be because they really
Definitely,
stab him to death, don't they? They really sort of
yeah.
plunge all the swords and knives in and
And
stuff.
interestingly, his blood's black
Yeah,
as they pull it out. So
yeah, yeah. His
obviously,
venom
couldn't do that
blood.
scene with
Yeah.
red blood, could you either?
No, that's
You
true.
you couldn't do that with all the red blood
Yeah.
bursting everywhere. That would definitely get an 18, and I definitely don't want that.
No.
So yeah, I actually really enjoyed that scene. I thought, wow,
Okay.
I was kind of like,
I
this
wasn't
is
that impressed with his
fun.
speech. I thought the actor
No,
wasn't particularly great for that part. But
he was someone who was going to fail.
I liked the idea of what they're trying to do, in respect of showing how Sauron had kind of come to where he was. But this to me is where I'm sort of like I'm trying to work out. Obviously, this is the second age, isn't it? Rather
Yeah,
than the third, where all the Lord of the Rings happens.
I guess.
But
Yeah.
it's kind of a funny period because that's in the first series. You see when Galadriel, sorry, is talking
Mm,
about her brother who gets
mm,
killed by Sauron and his men, and that's why she's
mm,
after him, and that's why she's so
mm,
desperate to kill him and all this sort of thing.
mm,
You see imagery of him as a bit like the Peter Jackson sort of Sauron, with this very spiky
mm,
helmet, very in his
mm, mm,
armor. He's
mm,
already
mm.
leading the orcs and things at that point. So I was a bit confused why.
That was a projection forward, wasn't it? More.
No, because she
Mm,
was talking. I'm sure she was talking about
mm.
he
Anyway.
killed my brother. There's a bit where you see her brother on the slab, and that's why she's gone
Okay.
off to try and fight him. And then at the very beginning of the first season, she fights this troll or something, this ice
Mm,
troll, and
mm.
that's because she was looking for Sauron and trying to kill him. Was there something that happened in the first season after that he was then not the leader of the orcs? Do you know what I mean? Because he'd used the orcs to kill Galadriel's brother, and then suddenly
Mm.
he's not the leader of the orcs, and he's being
Yeah. I
crowned
think
at the beginning of
maybe
this.
you're right.
I
There's
think there's a bit of confusion
inconsistencies.
here.
There's inconsistencies, but I
Yeah,
don't know whether I feel like they've kind of they've begun to rewrite it almost.
yeah,
So it feels like they're responding to the critics and they're responding to some of the feedback, some of the
yeah,
and I think that they have changed it maybe potentially.
maybe.
I definitely feels like with this new season, with the first episode anyway so far,
Mm,
that it's making more of an attempt to be something that's entertaining
yeah,
rather than necessarily loyal. And I think now got to accept the fact that this is their own vision of Tolkien's work, and that
yes.
it's not going to be 100% correct in
No,
how
no.
how the scholars see Tolkien's work,
Yeah, yeah.
And so I'm going to watch this season. And I'm going to try and enjoy it because last season it was painful, and I've
Yes.
said to myself, life's too short. Why are we getting so annoyed by this? I actually sat, I was really entertained, apart from some of
Yeah.
the elf moments. Everything else I thought was absolutely fine. And I really enjoyed Daniel Wayman as Gandalf. I thought that he was fantastic in
That's
this.
good. That's interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I thought he was good, but I'm not just I'm not a fan of the little harefoots, are they called, or
yeah.
non-hobbits, you know.
Harfoots. Yeah.
Um I, I, we've had that before.
Companions.
We've
Yeah.
had it before in, Lord of the Rings, obviously Frodo and so on, and then The Hobbit with Bilbo Baggins, and do we need another thing of a
Well,
story going off with
I think it
some
largely
Hobbit-y type people?
depends on how it's done. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a shame that is it Poppy
Yeah.
that's come in now, the second one or something like that, and
Yeah. It makes it
she
very much like Sam
it
and
does,
it's
yeah.
yeah, it's that's just not so original for me,
It's
I
not, but the companions, I don't have a problem with the companions because I think that is just throughout so many stories.
hmm,
It's just how they then accomplish it, and I think
hmm,
she's pretty much surplus to the needs in
I
this
know.
particular situation.
Yeah. Yeah. No, definitely. But I wasn't totally disgusted by it. I didn't think it was terrible. We've seen some
No,
other stuff recently that was terrible. This
yeah,
hasn't been terrible.
no,
As a first episode in a season, yeah, there was a bit of setting things up, and you understand that's the way a first episode is, isn't it, for a season?
yeah.
So hopefully there's going to be a bit more, action and things happening.
I found
Obviously,
Sauron's story interesting. I thought that was
I think the only thing with the Sauron story is this it feels a bit like these days they're always trying to turn characters which are, you know, pure evil, and that's part of my problem with this is they turn those characters to try to make them more sympathetic, and that they are, oh, they've got a backstory, that this is the reason why they're so mean. You know,
mm,
he's an evil creature. This is a fantasy world. You know,
mm,
the success of things like Lord of the
mm,
Rings, Star Wars, all those
mm,
sorts of great is
mm.
the clear distinction between good characters, evil characters, and the battle between the
Yeah,
dark and the light.
yeah.
And they are systematically going through these old
They're not trying to
franchises,
do this.
and I
Mm,
think they're just trying to make him a much more sympathetic character. Oh, why? Oh, poor old Sauron. This
yeah,
guy wants total domination of the world. He's an evil, evil
yeah,
bastard,
yeah.
and all that stuff about him getting backstabbed by the orcs. That was the only thing for me. I could, getting killed. Oh, he's oozed away and he's managed to creep back in
Mm,
and so on. I just thought,
mm,
why are we trying to make him seem sympathetic? I don't want him to be sympathetic. I want to be thinking, God, we've got to get this bastard.
mm,
There's a lot of talk of there being too much focus on the bad guys in this, and I don't mind
mm,
seeing the bad guys. I really don't. But I
mm.
want the good hero. I want the really good heroes to be the
Yes,
characters
yeah.
we're rooting for. Um, you
It's
know,
almost as if they're making him into an anti-hero,
I
which
know, and it's
is
like
not what you
you
want.
can't then
Yeah.
go and watch Lord of the Rings and think, yeah, this well, now I see why he came out and
Mm.
killed everybody. No, you don't. It's completely contradictory.
I think on some level, art, taking it to another place, art does mirror society sometimes, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah,
And
no,
I
you're
think
right. This is
that
this is
there is
partly
a
about
certain
the world,
element
and
of that.
yeah,
It is partly around the world. It's
yeah,
about inclusivity.
yes,
Unfortunately, they've
yeah,
dragged a lot of that in,
yeah.
and
Even the evil
I
bastard can
say
be partly good.
I say unfortunately, but there are definite there are definitely good things about it. I
Yeah,
just think that they when you marry that with a text that's older, it becomes difficult.
yes,
I think that it changes the identity. The identity situation is definitely very evident
yes.
in this show,
Yeah, and I
and
think you're right. Exactly what you're saying
yeah,
there. This is quite an old book,
mm,
written in what, the 50s, was it? You
something like
know,
that. Yeah, after the war.
and
Yeah,
it's taking what the principles of it and slightly twisting it to modern standards, and I sometimes think, why do we have to do that? It's that's what it
it is
was. That
difficult.
was what it was about. But then you want to see a bit more about this stuff. Would it seem really outdated and old fashioned if they kept it to the original principles? It's so tricky, isn't it?
It would on some level, and I think that it is a difficult road to walk. I think
Yeah,
you've got to be really imaginative and inventive, and maybe you've got to drop things which could be interpreted either way, rather than just throw it
yeah.
out, bearded dwarfs in your face, stuff like that. It's like you want it to be more subtle and subversive. But
Mm,
but with a product like this, it's so glossy. They want everybody to like it. They want to try
yeah,
and land it right in the middle.
yeah.
It's like getting the right
I don't
certificate.
know if you
You
felt it
know,
that like the music in the background seemed a little bit more Peter Jackson style of
yeah.
music, the sort of
This,
style
yeah,
and the background side of things. It was very visually trying to get into that way, make you think of that, wasn't it? And
yeah.
that approach. But yeah, I'm listen, I'm not adverse to watching the rest of the series,
Mm,
but I would say I'm not that fussed about watching it again. I've seen that,
no,
that's fine. I'm not going to spend another hour or so watching that again.
yeah,
And I think that's always a good test of saying, would you see it again? That's something that's there's certain like yourself,
yeah,
we've watched so many films again and again
yeah,
because we
yeah,
love them, they're so good.
yeah.
Um,
There
I
were one or two things in there like that. Some sequences that I just was quite fascinated by, so I'd watch them again. I'd
yeah.
skip past the elf bits, but I think, for example,
Yeah,
I thought Sam Hazeldine recast as Adar was a good
was good.
casting.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
thought he was really good. I just thought how his presence
yes,
was powerful,
yeah,
and again, I just think that it just shows you the importance of the casting director in stuff like this.
yeah, definitely.
And I just feel like you have to obviously they need to spend more time doing this,
Yeah,
making sure they pick the right characters.
yeah, yeah,
And because it has really all come down to that.
yeah.
Because unfortunately,
That's some of the biggest
Morphy
comments, isn't
Clark
it?
is like
Yeah,
she's completely unsuited to Galadriel,
no,
and I just feel like uh, there's that the casting director and the director need to take bigger the producers they all need to take more responsibility for stuff like that. It's such
yeah.
an important, and maybe they need more British actors.
Well, we also do play a good baddie, don't we,
Yeah, we
British
we play good
actors?
baddies.
Although the guy who was playing Sauron, he did a good enough job. I don't think he was a terrible, performance or anything. I just not necessarily
He's a
agree.
bit smarmy, a bit. He's like
He's okay,
he's
but I would say it's just more like you say the production, the script and how they're sending this through. I just don't want him to become like this, like you say, like an anti-hero or a sympathetic character. That's not, this is a fantasy world where these creatures, Sauron is just pure
well.
evil through and through, in my opinion.
At the end of the episode, there's a trailer for the season,
Yeah,
so, which is kind of weird. What's coming up? I've never
yeah,
quite
yeah,
seen that before. So
yeah,
there's a number of ploys in this episode to try and get people back on board. This
yeah,
extended intro, which I thought was edited, what happened in the last season, and then
yeah,
this first sequence I thought was quite exciting, and then the end they're kind of trying to lure you into the next episode. Please watch the next episode, that
yeah,
kind of thing.
yeah. It
And
was,
I
wasn't it?
watched it. Yeah, it really was. And
Yeah.
I actually thought I sat there, I thought, actually, that looks quite good.
That,
I was
now this is the power of trailers, isn't it?
yeah,
But they did. You're right. I watched that bit and I thought actually there could be a few good bits in there. They might
yeah.
have pulled this round a bit.
They
So
really got into the making the rings because that's what we were complaining about last time as
yeah,
well.
I think
Because
that's what
there
I'd
was no
like to
rings of
see.
power,
Yeah,
was there? No rings
exactly.
of power. And
Yeah, only
this
those
time, you got
three.
all the
Yeah,
bloody rings. You got the
yeah.
dwarf rings. You got the human rings. Who's going to be corrupted? Let's just throw it. Let's all
I
the shit at the
know.
walls, and let's just see what happens. And I think it's going to be.
Yeah.
I'm quite excited to watch the next episode. So
Okay.
it's obviously done something right there. It's
Yeah, yeah.
obviously it's ticked a few boxes. I didn't sit there going, "Oh my God, what are we doing?" But this time I was like, "Hang on, yeah, please, this is not so
Yeah.
bad."
It didn't feel as bad as the first series, definitely.
No, mm.
Good. Good. Oh,
That's
well,
positive.
yeah, yeah, it's positive, and I'm sure we'll then talk about the next couple of episodes. Yeah. Yeah, that
Yeah.
sounds good.
Well,
Yeah.
definitely, we definitely it's nice to talk about where this is going.
Yeah.
There's a bigger story to this season, this
Yeah.
series. It's a IP. It's about what we do with
Mhm.
things these days,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
new shows. So
No,
yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, good. Anyway, we'd obviously love to hear your comments. So add any comments you want to put to the video. And don't forget to subscribe and like the video as well. We're gonna go and away and watch the second and third episodes. And we'll hopefully see you again soon.